I'm just going to kick off the meeting by announcing that effective today, the Speaker Potash has resigned both as delegate from Chatham and as Speaker of the Assembly for personal career reasons. In the interim, as Deputy Speaker, I'm serving as acting Speaker, hopefully not for too long. Pursuant to the Charter, at our next meeting on October 18th, I'm going to entertain a motion to elect a new Speaker, and that's going to be properly placed on the agenda. And because I'm participating remotely today, I don't believe it's efficient for me to attempt to chair this meeting from a distance. Therefore, after consultation with the clerk and the dean, in accordance with the rules of the Assembly and Robert's Rules of Order, I'm going to be appointing Delegate Oman as the Dean of the Assembly to chair today's meeting until its adjournment. So unless there's any objections in the room, Dean Oman, gavel's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will call this meeting to order, and let's go with the opening ceremonies. A moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Oh, before we do that, Mr. Clerk, would you read the opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. So today, of course, is October 1st, 2025 at 4 p.m. and we're in the Mary Pat Flynn Conference Center at the County Courthouse Complex. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates will be conducted both in person and via remote means in accordance with the applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all of that information is again available on the county website. Back to you, Mr.
Thank you. Now, if all those who can, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Frederickson.
Here.
Delegate Frizel. Delegate Fuller.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher.
Here.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Here.
Delegate Green. Delegate Harder.
Here.
Delegate O'Malley.
Here.
Speaker Pro Tem Oman.
Here.
The Chatham seat is currently vacant. Delegate Sampson.
Here.
Delegate Ty.
Here.
Delegate Warner.
Here.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, that is 13 delegates representing 95.56% of the county's.
Mr. Clerk, you skipped me, but I'm here.
Oh, wow. How did I do that? Sorry, sorry, Delegate Killian.
Now we'll move on to the approval of the journal and minutes, the Assembly Delegates regular meeting of September 17th, 2025. Can I get a motion to approve that journal?
So moved.
And second? And a second, thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Frederickson.
Yes.
Delegate Frizel. Yes. Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson. You're muted.
Correct.
Delegate Green. Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Pro Tem Oman.
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty.
Yes.
Delegate Warner.
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, that's 13 representing 95.56% of the county's population.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're on to the approval of the adoption of the order of business. Can I get a motion for the order of business, please?
So moved.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Friesel, Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Omen,
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo. Mr. Speaker, that's 13 delegates representing 95.56% of the county's population.
Thank you. On to number 8. Can I get a committee of the whole? Can I get a motion to adopt the order of business?
So moved.
No, I believe that's a motion to go to committee of the whole. That's what we're doing. So would you like a roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Roll call, please.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Friesel, Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Omen,
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo. Mr. Speaker, that motion passes 13 delegates, 95.56.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to go into public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to a public hearing on proposed ordinance 25-11, a supplemental budget appropriation for shared regional housing services fiscal year 2026. Public hearing is open. Is there anyone out there from the public that would like to speak on the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone online that would like to speak? Seeing none, do any of the delegates have any questions for staff? There will be a report from the Finance Committee with recommendations when the Assembly convenes. I don't see staff here that might want, yes. Oh, I didn't recognize you from there. Is there anyone from the Assembly that would like to speak to staff about this? No? None?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
or Speaker, I'd just like, on behalf of the administration, like to thank the Assembly for how speedily you've taken this up, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
But we're just doing our job. I think it's a great, the great thing that you brought it up. So that means we can close the public hearing. Number 10, we would need communications to the regional commissioner, administrator, and directors. Deputy Assistant Administrator Herrick, are you that person today?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Assistant County Administrator Vera Harik. Mr. Dutton has just embarked upon his 2-week vacation, and so I'll be standing in for that period of time. Just to brief you, I think there were colleagues in the room were at the meeting on Friday that was out at the new Clean Water Center, newly named Clean Water Center, as Mass Tech has been renamed. The Board of Regional Commissioners held their meeting out there on Friday, and then there were speeches, meetings, and other festivities surrounding the ribbon cutting for the newly launched and newly renamed test center. And the various dignitaries were present, and it was a very well attended event, both the commissioners meeting and the follow-up festivities around the test center. The commissioners meeting took up, it largely consisted of presentations from the health department. It was really a health department day out there. Each of the divisions of the health department presented the work that they're doing. Jay Gardner, the health director, also made comments. Of course, Brian Baumgartel, the division director for the Clean Water Test Center and the wastewater division, gave some very thorough comments about the work that's going on out there, and very well received. You may wish to have similar information come to you from the health department. it was a rather lengthy presentation with all of the division heads standing up and providing a fair amount of detail. You might want to break that up into to several portions or spread it across several meetings if you so choose, and if you want those presentations for yourselves. Chip Riley gave a presentation on the FEMA changes and how they'll be affecting Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. And so Chip has those relationships well in hand and has covered those bases. Paul Brizala, our Assets and Infrastructure Manager, made a presentation on the space needs update, and Paul is here with us today to provide you related information. Let's see. And then lastly, the board took up and voted on, took a position on the allowance of accessory dwelling units within the Cape Cod Seashore National Park. And the board did fall on the side of wanting to support the Seashore's position in this regard. And voted accordingly. They then took up a consent agenda. And among the items was the approval of the AmeriCorps grant, foreseeing the approval that we actually got yesterday from the Massachusetts Service Alliance at around 4 p.m. yesterday for the grant year that started this morning. So better late than never, but the entire experience of that saga of the AmeriCorps grant funding has come to a very positive conclusion as of now, and we hope it remains so. We do recognize that the federal shutdown began due to budget conflicts at the federal government, and we don't foresee that affecting our activities and services at this time. I've heard from our Director of Human Services that continuum of care and home grant funds will be able to continue to be drawn down during the shutdown. I think that bodes well. I don't have direct information on that subject relative to AmeriCorps, but I'm extrapolating that will be the case there as well. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Delegate Pryzel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So first, I'm assuming the grant for AmeriCorps was the full amount we requested.
Yes.
Okay. And secondly, this federal shutdown does raise issues. I know you think right now that we're going to draw at least some of them, but is it possible that as it goes on, that some of the grants we're counting on getting, those funds won't flow to us for some period of time while the government is shut down?
Well, recent years have shown us that pretty much anything can be possible. The likelihood of that happening is relatively low, so long as the shutdowns is abbreviated in nature. But I'm certainly not in a position to prognosticate on that. Sorry.
And I would point out, Speaker, that some of those funds come through the state. So
yes,
that could also affect what we're getting in the way of state grants if this goes on for some period of time and there's a cash flow issue, shall we say. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? I have one. How many members of the AmeriCorps do we get this year? I know that it was a very difficult process of keeping them in line and keeping them interested in doing the.
I'm going from memory. I think it's 18. Is in the new class.
Yeah, that's great.
And there was a great, as I recall, the program manager Misty telling us that there was a great deal of interest, even in the throes of even in the April-May timeframe. There were a lot of people nationwide wanting to be AmeriCorps members. It's a very popular program and remains popular.
Thank you. Anyone else? If I don't see anyone. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to a presentation on Children's Cove education and training initiatives and outcomes for fiscal year 2025. We have Jacob Stapleton, Community Engagement and Education Program Manager from Children's Cove, and he has a presentation for us that will begin now. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. I haven't presented here before, so I'm getting used to all the technology layout and everything. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacob Stapleton. I'm the Community Engagement Education Program Manager at Children's Cove. So I'm really happy to be here with you. I apologize. I was supposed to be here a little while ago, and then I had a couple of medical things come up, so delayed my presentation to you all. So, but I'm happy to be here and hope to continue to come out and report on programs and services that we provide. So just a general overview and background, providing a little bit context and then providing some information about my program. So again, Children's Cove, we provided the coordinated response to cases involving crimes against children within the region. We serve the same jurisdictional area as the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office. So we respond to cases in that region, and in particular, or specific, it's related to child sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, witness to domestic violence or other crimes, as well as commercial sexual exploitation or trafficking of children. And that falls into a kind of a number of categories, which I'll talk a little bit more about. As a part of that response to cases involving sexual exploitation, trafficking, when those referrals come in, or when there's been a report that's been made either to the Department of Children and Families, or to law enforcement, rather than those cases just kind of running out with independent investigation, just like our other, child sexual abuse cases, we get a report and there's a regional response protocol related to that, where we're looking at how should we best respond to this case, responding to this child with a focus and an emphasis on safety. There's a lot of nuance with cases involving sexual exploitation and trafficking. There could be online components. We could be talking about multiple jurisdictions. We could be talking about multiple agencies that's reporting. And again, our first and foremost priority is the safety of the child. So we're going to be coordinating a response related to that, focusing on safety, and then how do we get to the next steps from there. Taking a step back from that, my program related to community engagement, education, and training is that we provide coordinated multidisciplinary training to our partners in the community. So Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, all departments of law enforcement, the Department of Children and Families. We work with medical professionals, youth-serving organizations, behavioral health providers, our schools, everywhere that is out there that is professionally working with a child. That's our catchment area. And so we're going to be working to ensure that we're providing information and resources on how to best recognize, respond, report these cases, but also for our professional partners, ensuring that they're getting the most evidence-based, up-to-date practices on how to respond to these cases, not only in an evidentiary sound way, but in a trauma-informed way as well. So that's one component of our education and training program, but we also provide community engagement and education. While we need to make sure that we're providing that information for those professionals that are out there, we need to talk about issues like child sexual abuse and crimes against children in the wider community. This is a heavily stigmatized issue that we need to bring voice to. And so engaging directly with the community, with parents, with caregivers, with teens, with kids is a major emphasis of our mission. And so we do that through community awareness, conversations, parent education, prevention education, showing up to awareness events and just being present. And we're pretty good at that, I do have to say. So, but where we're going to come and kind of merge these two together is I want to give a little bit of context related to just one aspect of the services in the region and talking about sexual exploitation. I provided this report to the commissioners back in February because every year since 2021, we've actually been looking at the instance and issues related to sexual exploitation of trafficking as a regional trend. As I mentioned, these cases are not just confined to a single town, and they're not confined to a single county. Problems don't start or stop at the bridge. They cross, they move over. We're always seeing that. And when we're talking about exploitation or trafficking, sometimes transportation is a component of that. And so we can't just look in this one area. So we work with our sister CACs in Bristol County and Plymouth County to really look at this snapshot of what is it that we're seeing. We look at all of our data, our numbers and trends come together every year when we put forth an annual report. I believe that was submitted to you all back in August. So you had that full report sent to you. It's also available on our website, childrenscove.org. And what we're seeing related to that is a continuous increase of referrals related to sexual exploitation. So to break this down a little bit more, when we're talking about sexual exploitation, it could be commercial sexual exploitation, right? An exchange or an offer of exchange for some type of sexual act or conduct for a fee, service, value, goods, something of value to the child. But this also encompasses online facilitated crimes against children. Child sexual abuse material, federally known as child pornography. It could be sextortion, where a child has sent an image or a video, and then they're being told, if you don't send more or send money or take action, I'll send this out to everyone. It could be AI generated material where there has been a photo of a child that has been manipulated through AI or computer technology to look as though it is sexually explicit content. So this kind of falls into a broader category with the number one unifying factor as being risk. And risk to that child. And so last year, when we look at our regional referrals for Bristol, Plymouth, and Cape and Islands, we had 533 referrals impacting 471 children. So 57 of those cases involved children who were 12 years old or younger. And the majority of cases involving those 13 to 17. And then we look also, we take into account those high school age youth, right? They might be 18, 19, but they're still enrolled in high school, right? They're still kind of a child within our community. So we did have some of those, but 75% of them were for those 13 to 17 years old. 18% were male identified youth, 80 identified as female, and about 2% identified as transgender. So we're kind of following in line with national trends, with where that kind of spread out. I will say though that male victims traditionally underreport. They don't come forward because there's a lot of shame and embarrassment of that. So we know we're not seeing some of those cases, but they are out there. They do exist. Regionally, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Those numbers you just gave us, that's Bristol, Plymouth, and the Cape combined, not just Cape Cod.
That's accurate.
Do you have, and are those ones that Children's Cove are involved with, all of those, or are you just involved with the Cape and Islands numbers?
So it's nuanced. Sometimes these are cases that they may originate. The original report or the filing of the report may come from Plymouth County reporting agency, school, DCF, law enforcement. However, there might be multi-jurisdictional elements related to that. So it might be an out of jurisdiction initial referral, but there may be an element to that. Or there may be a case or a situation where the individual was identified as residing, living, and the referral coming from Bristol County. However, the exploitation may have taken place on the Cape and Islands. So sometimes these are multi-jurisdictional where we're all working together on how do we best support this individual. Yes. So we have been responding to these types of cases officially through a regional protocol since 2016. When we're looking at the numbers across the board, we have seen a continuous increase in referrals within the region. So our numbers are kind of steadily increasing. There's some decreases here and there. We've seen the same thing. But when we look at the cumulative numbers, which is that dark blue bar that's here, we're seeing that these numbers are continuously increasing year over year. So the referrals are increasing. We are seeing these cases more often. So the question that sometimes comes up is, are we just getting more referrals because people are recognizing it and they're getting education, or is it happening more often? Unfortunately, you can't necessarily answer that thoroughly, right? Because you don't necessarily know. I would wager it's a little bit of both. I would definitely say when we're talking about online facilitated crimes against children, sextortion, CSAM, those types of things, those cases are definitely happening more often, because when we look at national trends through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, when we're looking at what are the types of referrals that are being seen by other counties, these cases are significantly increasing on a national and statewide level. So, and education, training, the more we do that, the better response. So it's a bit of both would be my best answer for that. So, so generally the issue, we've seen a big increase of online exploitation, that trending in upwards, and this is not going away. You know, we need to continue to provide significant education and training out to the community. This is a ongoing issue. You know, if you look at any organization, there's turnover. And so you can get into a school, you can get to a police department, you can get to, you know, the Department of Children and Families and provide training and give them that. And then within a few years, you had a pretty large turnover. So education, community education and training is a constant effort to ensure that we're providing an accurate response to children who may be at risk. And, you know, this has been a big issue over the last year, is talking about AI. AI impacts everything, right? Just like the internet impacted everything, including child sexual abuse material, including online and other facilitated crimes against children. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a part of that. So here's where action comes into play, right? I think we take a look at this data, we look at this information to say, okay, what are we going to do about it? One of the biggest pieces, because we've seen that online exploitation increase, this is where we said, okay, we need to provide some education to the community, and more importantly, we need to educate kids. We need to educate kids, and we need to make sure that they're getting the information on how to be safe, because one of the things that not every parent is equipped with is how do you talk about online safety? That's another thing that we're out there. But we wanted to make a big impact and get in front of kids and talk about this as quickly as we could. So we partnered with a gentleman, his name is Richard Geary. He runs the Institute for Responsible Online and Cell Phone Communication. I have to talk with him about shortening that name up a little bit, but the acronym he uses is IROC2. And he is a national speaker. He used to work in the tech industry. He started recognizing these problems way before most other people even started this conversation. And he wanted to talk about digital mindfulness and safety and get this information in front of kids. We've been working with him for a number of years. He's been presented to statewide conferences in the Commonwealth, and he's utilized throughout different counties in the state as well. But he really provides that digital mindfulness and online safety. And so we partnered with the Monomoy Regional School District as well as the Mashpee School District to provide this direct presentation education to students in those districts from 3rd to 8th grade. How do we focus on being safe online, having that online responsibility and digital citizenship in a way which is safe and comfortable? It doesn't dive into, say, the issues I deal with, but it gives them the kind of mindset on how do you engage. We also provided some community forums for parents and caregivers to make sure that they had that information. So these are just some photos of the presentation that we had provided to kids. These are 1-hour presentations. And a lot of the times when you think of, oh, kids, they can't focus on things for an hour. Richard is a phenomenal presenter. I think I'm an okay presenter. He's a phenomenal presenter, and he kept every single one of these kids from 3rd to 8th grade engaged and participating and active. You can see their hands are raised. They're locked in to all of it. Phenomenal presentations in the region, tremendous feedback, not only from the students, but from staff and from faculty and from parents as well. And so this was our kind of test case. Is this something that we can get out into the schools to make sure that we're starting to take a bite of this? One of the big things that I'll say is when we look at these photos and you see the kids' hands raised, that question was, how many of you guys play Roblox? How many of you guys engage and play online? How many of you talk to folks online? And I don't know if you guys follow this kind of stuff, but there's some major legislative action taking place against Roblox right now because of their lack of safety protocols and the facilitation of crimes against children on their platform. So these are issues that are here, right? This is not just happening in a vacuum somewhere else. These are issues that are here and impacting our children in the community. And so we had tremendous feedback. We've talked with both of the districts. We're continuing to partner with both Mashpee and Monomoy for this upcoming year, and we're in conversations with a number of other districts to bring these presentations to their school this year as well. We know that prevention is going to be the best remedy to some of the issues that we've seen, providing that education, parent training and forums. And so we're really ramping that up for this year. We're looking at a number of forums for parent education and training as well, and really regionally looking at how are we providing this online safety along with our other trainings and general awareness that we provide to the community. So definitely looking to do more direct youth presentations and get that information out there. So. Oh, and I said I'd keep it under 15. I think I did a pretty good job with that. I started my timer a little late. But I will definitely entertain any questions that you all have, provided we have time for that. So.
Let's start with Delegate Sampson.
Do you have I noticed from your chart that when you compared the three counties, we were less than 100 per year of referrals. Do you have a breakdown of just the number per town that you can provide to not today?
Yes, I can get that information.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Delegate Pryzel.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. So I noticed you were reaching out to 3rd to 8th graders, but in your statistics, 75% of the victims here are 13 to 17-year-olds. So there's a certain disconnect in my mind there about, or at least you should be expanding. Should you be talking to that group? That's the highest impacted group. Don't they need this kind of education?
So there's a yes and a no to that. So by moving younger, we're hoping to get ahead of the curve, building them with the skills, the information, and tools that they need so that by the time they're getting to that, there is a lowered risk factor. The individuals that are in high school, we are providing additional education and training through our child exploitation program coordinator. We partner with the district attorney's office to provide that education and training to high school age youth there. However, the primary issues that a lot of the schools are saying that they're concerned with, and where some more of those referrals are coming in, really is that middle school age. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve by talking to elementary students, maintaining that communication through middle school. And then we are present in the high schools. We have a high school-based program. It's called our Teen Task Force, which addresses a lot of those issues and provides that education. And we also use peer leaders within the high school to provide their information to peers, because teenagers don't like listening to us older folks. Because we kind of don't know anything about what they're going through. So we're really trying to utilize peer leadership and those other folks that are there to do that.
I then to ask a question. So, sorry. Delegate Ty, I didn't see your hand up.
That's okay. What other districts have you been in touch with in regard to this training?
So we have communication going on with private schools. So we're talking with St. Pope John Paul II, their school. We're having conversations going with Nauset Regional School District. And then we're working on setting up a meeting with another district. I don't want to name them yet because I want to give them an opportunity to respond, and another one, both which are on the Upper Cape as well. So, yeah. The challenge is I would love to be in all of them at the same time. There's just only so many days in a school year. Yeah.
Delegate Skillian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Mr. Stapleton. Thank you for the presentation. In terms of law enforcement involvement, is this primarily a federal agency that handles this, or is it start at the local level and go up to that? Because I assume in these perpetrators could be anywhere in the world for them.
So when are you talking about the process for
Yes.
when we receive referrals with expectation? So it starts with local law enforcement. You know, the elements of that, and it's different for every case. So I'm going to speak very generally on it. Is so if there's been a concern related to exploitation, sexual exploitation, online exploitation, whatnot. The very first element of the protocol is that a 51A, so an allegation of abuse or neglect, needs to be filed with the Department of Children and Families, and identified that human trafficking, there's a suspicion of that. That then gets kicked to us, local law enforcement, and the district attorney's office, where we look at things from a regional response protocol. At that point, there'll be a determination of, does this involve multiple jurisdictions? Does that mean state police? Does it mean federal police? Oftentimes it'll start with local law enforcement, because even if there is a cellular device or technology, then that might need to start an investigation here locally, looking at devices and identifying that. Can cases involve FBI, Homeland Security, military, police? Yeah. We have 2 tribal communities within our region which fall under federal jurisdiction, so federal law enforcement may come into place. We have a military base. So all of our cases are pretty nuanced and case by case, but it does go from the local level through.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Delegate Prizell.
Thank you. So I know that you do some work on the islands too, right? Nantucket and Muskeg. So is any of this outreach and education that you're doing, including any of the schools there, or?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, I have a couple of questions. Number one, on the undefined, you said great statistics on how many cases do you think are unreported? And do you have a clue about, say, the 471 you mentioned or the 533 you mentioned? Do you think you have an idea of how many of these get unreported, and how much bigger the problem is than you can quantify with statistics?
So generally, when you look at just child sexual abuse as a general, as a national, the percentage of cases which are reported are roughly 1 in 10. So only about 10% of cases involving child sexual abuse ever go reported, and that's not just while it's happening, but that's during the lifetime of the individual who experienced victimization. When we are talking about things which take place online, and depending on the age, and this goes for child sexual abuse, this goes for online, is there may be a lack of understanding or knowledge of what takes place, that there is something that's wrong. And with these other elements, and especially if we're talking about like online facilitated crimes, and even if we are talking about in-person exploitation, there's a lot more fear and concern at place. That person who is the perpetrator may have photos, they may have videos, they may have information about that person that they could share in very public settings, which is really where, when children don't feel safe to come forward because they're scared of what may happen, they kind of get deeper into the rabbit hole. And so because of that, I can't speculate on a specific number, but I'd say there's a good bit that is unreported, that we don't know about, that isn't getting brought forward. And this is why we do community education, why we do training, why we provide this information in schools, and saying, hey, we're a safe place where you're going to receive confidential services and supports. We hear you. You're not the only one who's been through this. We want to get you the help that you deserve. So unfortunately, I would say it's happening a lot more than what we would want it to be. Even if you say we're just looking at the cases involving 60 or 70 kids on Cape Cod, is that an acceptable number at all? It's not, right? And unfortunately, it is more than that. It is more than that. I can't tell you how much more it is, but it is more than that. So.
Thank you for that. It is scary because you hear these stories out there about, potential suicides or attempted suicides that you can't imagine why that is taking place. But online abuses just could be from anywhere. It could be Russia, for crying out loud. There could be all kinds of implications that are so much bigger. That's why I'm glad that Delegate Killian talked to you about how the federal government getting involved with this too. My other question is this is expanding slowly through all of the school systems. You mentioned several, and you mentioned a couple that you can't mention right now. Is the funding an issue? Is there enough funding there for this program to go forward?
So anything related to budget or funding, I try to stay away from that. I just want to get the work done. So I would direct that question to Director Stacey Gallagher.
Thank you. Are there more questions from the board? Oh, I see. Okay. I have no limit on questions. There's not a 2-question limit here today. I can't speak for the next speaker.
Thank you. I like this no limit environment. So you gave us the profile of victims. Can you give us some profile of who the perpetrators are?
Whew. I mean, look, I could take all day. I don't know if you guys can notice, but I can talk a lot. So, but if we're talking about it, it depends on the type of crime that's being facilitated. If it's an online versus an in-person, right? In-person facilitated crimes. There was a research article which came out based out in Boston, but it really looked at a wider figure that said the average profile of a sex buyer in Massachusetts is a male within their 40s, typically college educated, may have a relationship, may have kids. That's your standard profile of a sex buyer within the Commonwealth based off of one report. But when you look at cases involving commercial sexual exploitation, you look at it at a federal level, a national level, there's sometimes you'll see reports. I think it's called Operation, I can't remember it, but it's a federal investigation where they try to go into a region and recover victims who have been were victims of in-person sexual exploitation, and that tends to be the profile of a perpetrator. Is it's an adult male that is in reasonable standing within the community, may have a relationship, may have kids. When you're talking about online facilitated crimes, unfortunately, really, it can be anyone. It could be folks that are here in the United States, in town, in the Commonwealth. It could be an adult. It could be a youth. It could be somebody in another country. I just saw a case not that long ago where it was a high school student who they're suspecting may have victimized hundreds of individuals. These types of cases and those that are perpetrating sexual exploitation and sextortion online, if this is what they do, this is what they do. And they spend a lot of time and energy casting a very wide net to try to get people to build their trust, to find those kids that might be isolated, that might be alone, that might not feel safe or comfortable and are looking for somebody where they're going to build that relationship with them. They're going to take advantage of that loneliness. They're going to manipulate them and get them to a point where they give up something that they shouldn't. And then that's when the net closes. And that's a behavior. That's a personality, that's a process. And that could be really anybody. That being said, it's a pretty similar profile to in-person as well. But yeah.
That 10B, I've asked to postpone till the next meeting. So we do have more time with Children's Cove and Mr. Rosalo later on too. So I just want you to know that you don't feel, I appreciate your time schedule too, but the board can get very comfortable delving further into this if they wish. Mr. Clerk.
I just wanted to ask you to pull the presentation down so that we can, stop sharing, I guess. So yeah, cool, perfect, thank you.
So with that caveat, is there anyone else either on the video or here in the room that would like another question or two? Anything answered? Any issues? Well, first of all, I'll defer to Delegate Harder because she has not spoken yet.
Thank you. Can we help? What could we help you do? Outreach? Should we host a training or something? Is there any way the assembly could do anything to help get this message out?
Yeah, so, as the community engagement education program manager, I'm looking to figure out what are ways that we can get out into the community. If that's just a basic Cove 101 presentation, hey, what is it that we do? We're talking about these issues. If you have a youth serving organization within your town, have they received training from us on how to better recognize, respond, and report to abuse? We're happy to provide that education and training. Again, all of our education and training is we'll make it work for any organization that serves kids. Parent forums, I mean, really, if there's something you can think of, then we can probably make it happen. So whatever I can do, whatever our team can do, we're happy to help.
Delegate Sampson, please.
Thank you. You were talking about your cooperation with various law enforcement agencies. You don't get involved in the actual investigations.
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yes,
Through the district attorney's office.
through Children's Code. So when there has been a report of child sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, witness to domestic violence or any other crime, sexual exploitation, human trafficking, if there's been a report that has been made to law enforcement, to the Department of Children and Families, or to the district attorney's office, those cases come to us. So what happens is we'll receive that report. We'll then coordinate with those agencies, but also with the parent and caregiver. We need to identify, is that child ready, willing, and able to come in and have a conversation with us about it. Rather than that child having to talk to 5 to 8 different individuals, right? Law enforcement, a patrol officer, a detective, a DCF investigator. Who was their first report? Was it to a parent? Was it to a caregiver? Was it to a teacher? Did they get brought to somebody else, right? Rather than having that happening where that child is continuously having to relive that trauma, but then all these separate written reports are being made, right? Which reports, when it goes to court, when it goes to prosecution, those aren't identified as reports, those are identified as testimony. And when you have 5 to 8 different reports, right, written by different people with different perspectives and all of that, there's probably going to be some differences in that documentation, right? But that's seen in a court setting as discrepancy in testimony, which creates reasonable doubt in any courtroom. So the process of child advocacy centers is to reduce that. It's so that once we get that report, right, training individuals and getting those minimal facts in so that we can have that child come to us in a safe, comfortable, child-friendly environment to meet with a forensic interviewer, one of our team members who has been specifically trained on how to talk with children in a developmentally, culturally appropriate way, in a forensically sound manner, while that multidisciplinary team made up of law enforcement, prosecution, child protection, medical, and mental health professionals, they observe from a separate area. So they're getting all of the information they need. So we have one unified report. And then we're going to meet as a team on what are those next steps. We're going to meet with that non-offending parent and caregiver, talk with them about kind of how can we be supportive of that? How can this investigation move forward? And then we do that. So with those cases, yeah, we are the avenue by which that child gives their statement, where we get that primary investigation completed. All of those interviews are recorded, and those are kept under the jurisdiction of the district attorney's office. They have ownership of those, but we are the ones who are doing the interviews with children related to these cases. So we are involved directly with that investigation, yes.
Please raise your hand if there's any other questions. This has been very informative. Very informative. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I left my information up on the screen, but you can look me up. And if you haven't been to Children's Cove yet, I know we've kind of put that out. I'd be happy to have you come over. I can schedule it one-on-one or as a group, give you a tour and just kind of talk. And I don't know, like I said, I can talk all day. So you can chat me up, ask me any question, and I'm happy to be there. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, 10B, we're going to postpone IT conversation for later because I wanted to give enough time for the assembly to delve into our next 10C presentation on our master plan, facilities condition assessment and space needs with Paul Rosal, Barnstable County Assets and Infrastructure Manager. I'm really glad to have you come because I personally have a lot of questions for you.
Thank you for having me. Yes, for the record, Paul Rosal, Assets and Infrastructure Manager. Just give me 1 second to share my presentation I have. Okay, we're full screen now and ready to begin. So first, I just wanted to start with a property and lease overview, then jump into our facility conditions assessment and master plan and have a discussion after that. Obviously, if any questions come up during the presentation, please feel free to engage. So just property and lease overview. Barnstable County has a number of properties and buildings across Cape Cod, from Bourne, to Orleans and expanding toward Wellfleet. So we have an inventoried list that this portfolio is up for our consideration for the master plan and facility condition assessment study. And just to further, detail some of our locations, County Complex, which is where we are right now. We have our IT department located in the Innovation Building. We have a First District courthouse, which is leased to the trial courts. Cape Cod Commission is down the hill. We have the old jail, which houses health and environment, human rights. We have conference rooms in that building. We have the water quality lab, which also houses human services. Deeds and probate, which is leased to the courts, also serves as an annex for our finance department. Facilities workshop is located there as well. And then Superior Courthouse, where we have county administration, finance and facilities. Outside of the complex, we have Mass Tech, which is the Cape Cod Clean Water Center, which is licensed out at Joint Base Cape Cod. We have the farm, where we have a farm office building out there to house roughly 3 people. We have the dredge, which is in a vacant shared lot in the town of Dennis. We have the Municipal Fire Training Academy, Children's Cove, and the Cooperative Extension in AmeriCorps, which is in a leased property. So lots of different players. And as far as this master plan, what are we really looking at? We're trying to figure out how we deal with our needs, short term and long term. So for example, dredge they need an office and a formal yard garage to work out of. Children's Cove has some accessibility issues and functional space needs. Mass Tech right now, going through the Gates Foundation, is in the process of expanding. Our lab has ongoing needs, mechanical HVAC and some space concerns. Our county administration and finance office needs some improvements and will need to deal with a relocation during an upcoming Superior Courthouse renovation project. We have a Finney's Lane property, which has some restrictions to it. Cooperative Extension is in lease space. We have AmeriCorps with housing improvements needed. We have our building that the Cooperative Extension uses on the farm, which needs some improvements. Human Services is located in the lab, which is a concern given the activities that the lab has and hazardous materials. IT will likely be needing some office space down the road. We have our PFAS liability at the Fire Training Academy. We have staff within this old jail, and then Picasset property sale. So a lot of things going on, very complicated situation. So I'm trying to, overview as much as I can, and abbreviate it where I can, just to get through this presentation. The other major player is our mass trial courts group. We have Superior Courthouse, First District Courthouse, Second District Courthouse, and Deeds and Probate. They occupy over 50% of our portfolio based on square footage. So they're a major player. We have a lease with them, and they're important for this exercise as well. So first thing, facilities conditions assessment. What we're looking at here is getting our arms around all of our existing buildings, property, what we need to do for improvements, what the cost would be associated with them, and how we balance that out on a financial program. So in this case, our consultant Gensler acted as the project manager, architect. We also had other groups come in for structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, building envelope, civil, accessibility. When we're doing any kind of improvement or identifying a project, it's important to be aware of all the details and the cost associated and what triggers we might have, where depending on percentage of the cost of the project and building space, you might trigger the need for a fire protection system. So that might be something that out of the blue, okay, you have your project, you think you're good, now you need $1 million worth of fire protection, or you trigger additional accessibility items. So we're really trying to get our arms around what these costs are and how we can plan for the future with them. So with the facility condition assessment, at a very high level, I almost call this like an executive summary level, our consultants went through the buildings and they did a simple rating system, excellent, good, fair, poor, color coded, just so we can get a better idea of where we're at. So this is an example of the old jail. So they did an overview of the building and they did a rating synopsis. As you can see, the overall rating is poor. There's quite a few projects that are needed to bring the building up to code or up to other requirements. And with this building assessment, they went through and looked at, site conditions, as far as, paving, roadway, related structural systems to the building, the actual building envelope. And in addition to this executive summary, attached to the draft facility condition assessment plan is a very lengthy, detailed engineering report, which details every component. So this is a great just bird's eye view of what we're dealing with. Our mechanical HVAC system on the old jail is aging. Same thing with electrical, plumbing. So as we talk about, the question would be, can we renovate the old jail? We can, but here's things that we need to really be aware of and likely renovate in addition. So we're not just talking about sheetrock and putting in an IT system. We're looking at, okay, what's behind the walls? Is the HVAC system adequate? Is it going to break down in the near future? So we looked at a number of things to get a handle on what the conditions are and to scope out potential projects. We also looked at the south wing of the jail and same routine here. We had our engineering groups walk through and they assessed the building, which is in equally poor condition. It's essentially left as is since the sheriff left. So from here, we summarized all of our buildings and the ratings they would have and projects associated with it. So very high level. When you go to look through now the plan right now is draft. So when review and look through it, you can dive into it as deep as you want. If this suffices, okay, great. If you want to go into Superior Courthouse and say, I want details on, the facade or structure, there's pictures, there's notes associated with it. So from here, as far as the planning, and it ties, somewhat into capital planning, would be the urgency of the project. So we try to identify what is critical, in the next few years, what can go out 3 to 5, and what can get pushed off to the latter. So we've identified some projects here, and as we develop capital plans for future years and and a financial strategy, you might see some of these projects be moved forward. And with that, the real key part for us was, and again, this is a high level overview of cost. We have detail cost estimates to back these up, but it's showing some of the numbers involved with bringing these buildings up to different code or requirements. And again, just keep a note that this is not all must do in the next 1 to 3 years, but it's just a bigger picture as far as what we're looking at. So Superior Courthouse alone is looking at potentially $12.7 million of construction work. Roughly, we have a $7 million appropriation for the exterior envelope. That's included with that assessment. But we know down the road, Superior Courthouse will need HVAC. It'll need some other attention. So we carried through that exercise on all the buildings. And again, we wanted to be able to provide a capital plan, but also a document for Carol, our finance director, to be able to reference, and Michael Dutton and Vera, to really start planning and visioning how we can, what we have for cost and projects we're facing and how we handle that over the long term. So we carry these through everything that we own, just to get to get our arms around it. Just further context to the trial court component, as I mentioned, they take up over half of our portfolio. The work associated with those buildings alone is $52 million, which that would be subject, based on our lease, to a roughly 75% reimbursement. But if we were to tackle that $52 million worth of work at any given time, the county would have to front the money, and about 1.5 years later, as a lease payment, we would get a reimbursement from the court. So it's important to be aware of where that takes up a major component of bandwidth. So that's essentially part number one, the facility condition assessment. The The second part was the master program planning or in-depth space needs. So what we did, we're looking to, obviously inventory our staff and our public facing services and the way that we essentially conduct business. Do we have right size spaces for that work? What collaboration is involved? What do we need to maybe support additional community functions? So again, trying to get our arms around everything and getting a vision and a technical approach to that. So we looked at what we have for staff now as far as an existing headcount and where we think we might be 2035, near 2035 under ideal circumstances. So we could increase staff by 40 to 50 people. Obviously, that's tied to budget, grant availability, supports and needs of the town. But it's important to be aware of where we could see ourselves going and how we could support the community and the local towns. We also looked at how certain groups might want to be co-located near each other. And then also what square footage they occupy and what they would need, or can we reduce square footage? So for example, the old jails, example in the lobby, there's some space that we have, we have maybe 2 or 3 offices. Can we look at that space? Can we fit more people there? Is it too full? Can we knock down a wall maybe to improve efficiency? So we're trying to look at the big picture and how we can work with what we have, and then what do we think we need down the road?
I'd like to recognize Delegate Brazel.
If they could just to interpret your slide, go back one, please.
Yeah.
So you have a column 2025 HC, and then you got numbers there. What's that column about?
2025 HC is actually the head count.
Oh, the number of people in those spaces.
Yeah,
Okay.
people in those spaces, and again, it's draft, and there's some subject to a final vetting process, but just trying to get our arms around that big picture and what we think we need.
Thank you.
I see the delegate from Harwich.
Thank you. And the recommended, what year is that?
So we're looking at 2025 right now, and the future projected is 2035. And again, this was a conversation with our departments. Where do you think you're heading? Where do you think you're going? What are you aware of for grants or the need for expansion or conversations with towns? I mean, none of this is the final end all be all, but just to get a feel of what we're talking. We're going from 220 to 267. If we're going to 400, okay, that's a whole different game. Or if we're reducing down to 150, just trying to right size what we're looking at here.
Thank you. Are there more questions while we're at this point? And Delegate Wyman Colombo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question has to do with the head count as well. And thank you for clarifying that. But the head count in 2025 is 148. Am I reading it correctly?
At the bottom, there's a yellow column that says
Okay.
total.
Okay.
So the existing condition number is 220, and again,
And you're going to 267.
267. And this again this is draft. We haven't formally gone through the say commissioner approval or a delegates conversation, but.
Thank you. I was looking at the top number and going across. I'm wondering how we go from 148 to 212. So you've clarified for me. Thank you very much.
Anyone else before we continue? Thank you for your patience.
Okay, and from here, knowing what we're dealing with as far as square footage and spaces, who would be, where would we have an advantage for as far as co-locating departments in the future? So we have a number of groups that are public facing, such as Aquafund and Human Services, Human Rights, and the nursing department. And for example, Human Services is in the second floor of the lab, where we're having a senior group come and engage with them, so they have to go through the actual lab, which is has its own protocol for glasses and long sleeves, pants. They're going up a set of stairs or potentially a lift. They're getting consultation, then going back down, where sometimes the lab will receive them, bring them up. Now, if there's ever an emergency in the lab, trying to evacuate everyone, keeping track of a head count. So there's some logistic issues, and ideally, it'd be great if Human Services was on a first floor level, being able to see reception and worked with that way. We have administrative groups, which have some, like county administration and finance. We work with them amongst each other daily. Fire and dredge, we saw some opportunity maybe for some cohabitation there and so forth. So we're just trying to get a vision of where we are. And then also knowing that maybe down the road, the towns push, we want X service and how would that service come in? So trying to be flexible with how things go in the future and knowing that things could change based on needs. So from here with this master plan process, we're looking at almost an overall just a block diagram of square footages. So in those, the diagrams I just shared, we talked about what each department has for their needs. This is kind of pulling it into, okay, if they were cohabitated, if we were ever to, move forward with some sort of expansion, how would the adjacency work? And just the beauty of these is they can be moved and adjusted, but just trying to get a better understanding of how people would work together, how the layout would be in a typical building. So we went through this exercise for numerous groups, and for here, for example, this county complex core group, facilities, emergency preparedness, parts of the cooperative extension, you could be at a 41,000 square foot building pretty fast. So it's amazing going through that whole process where at first, how much do you really need? And you start pulling all these different pieces together. It's quite a bit. So again, trying to just see where we are now, where we're heading, and provide some data to make some decisions off of. So same exercise essentially with the fire dredge, the farmhouse and the county farm. Children's Cove went through a similar process, and Joint Base Cape Cod Mastech group, they have leased trailers out there on a license. Same thing as far as space needs and how we're going to expand. So just trying to have everything documented. So if we have to move, vision or plan, we have it all in one spot. The other piece with this would be, as we look at our properties and potential for things, just doing a zoning analysis where we tend to have a lot of sole source aquifer on Cape Cod, a lot of water protection districts with restrictions. And an example of, as far as a zoning analysis, would be our Finney's Lane property. So the county owns a property on at the Zeros Finney's Lane in Hyannis on 132 across from the Barnstable Police Department. It's an undeveloped lot, potential for development, but at a deeper dive, the lot was provided to us by Mass DOT. There's some deed restrictions on that where if we were to sell the lot, the proceeds go back to DOT. So the lot's provided to us for county use. So, okay, knowing that, there's value in holding on to that lot. Now there's some setbacks from 132, as you can see here in the pink. That's essentially no build area. Then there's a zoning setback zone, which is the light blue. So we're actually, as far as developable property, buildable area, we're looking at the dark blue with a building footprint of potentially 22,000 square feet. And there's some prohibited uses in town based on zoning. This could all be revisited to petition through town council, but again, just kind of knowing where we're at with all these properties, and then providing background to make a sound decision on how to proceed. So from here,
I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Before we jump to the
Delegate
next
myself.
scenarios, which I know are interesting too, but I'm just curious, how many new buildings in reuse buildings are you talking about in this master plan? It seems like you're contemplating, even here on this complex, a wholly new building, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And then there's some reuse. So this plan contemplates both new building and reuse. What's the breakdown?
Yes, that's correct. So what we were asked to do when we were scoping is, again, not do a deep dive into everything, but get enough information to get some, a vision of what we need and the financial component associated with it to make sound judgments. So when I go through these scenarios coming up, we looked at the potential for, if we chose to rehab the old jail, what would the cost be and how would that work? If we decided, we should at least entertain, what would a new build cost, just for perspective, to have that, a couple scenarios and numbers associated with that. Maybe how we use this property to maybe increase revenue. So I'll go through those scenarios. So
But when you go through a non-reuse scenario, a new building, I mean, does that include potential demolition of an existing building so that you have a place to put the new one?
Yes, so and that's where the struggle would, it's like, for example, just a hypothetical, the old jail, when we started diving into the cost to renovate the old jail is close to building new. So that's a number that's great for all of us because we've always talked about what is it going to be and what now. If we build new, that's a a similar cost. But okay, if we decide we want to leave the old jail and we want to demo the old jail, that's in the $2 to $3 million magnitude. So getting some of these numbers just to have a ballpark to get an understanding of what we're looking at. Another thing we looked at, and this is on a farther extreme.
Excuse me, but the new build number should include a demolition figure within it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I'm trying to cover the big vision and like, for example, with the commissioners, we had to do 3 of these presentations, essentially deep diving into each because there's so many different variables. So my, the thought or goal today and working with, some discussions with Owen and Michael Dutton, our administrator, just to give here's essentially the vision, what we have and all the moving parts. And it's the more you dig into it, the more information we have, but also it's a complex process. And there's going to be a lot of, I think, back and forth and discussion on how to proceed. I'm not myself or Michael or anybody isn't saying, here's what we're going to do right now and here's what it is. But I think it's important to make a sound judgment. We would want to have just these big numbers, data. Okay, how is this going to work? And for example, another wild card is our PFAS liability. We're getting close on getting to making some progress with our delineation and what we own. And that will be an important piece because if, depending which way we go, there could be additional cost or we could be more favorable cost. And if we have additional cost, that could take away bandwidth to maybe renovating a building or we also looked at, I can get into that, leasing buildings too and did a quick financial run through just to get a feel because what about leasing? What about even buying an existing building? These are all things that should be on the table, but we wanted to have that information for the group to have to reference.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, so from here, scenarios as far as really from the engineering point of view, the goal, the county, has some needs or goals for co-location, room for growth, a public interface, how do we best manage our properties, code compliances. We wanted to go through some simple exercises of different scenarios to put things into perspective. So with our consultant Gensler, we came up with some, a handful of scenarios that could be applicable to us and just did some, quick layout and cost associated with it. So for example, these scenarios, which in the master plan will have documented, more detail. So this is just, again, an overview. But for example, scenario 1 would be renovate existing infrastructure with some addition to that existing infrastructure. And it's looking at other sites as far as renovating the county farm office building, Children's Cove, the fire training academy. Do we do an addition, potentially new build addition there? Mass Tech pretty much stays as is. So that's one scenario with cost. Scenario 2A would be a new build with a new lab. That's going to be an extremely costly endeavor. New build on this campus without a lab. Scenario 3 was looking at Finney's Lane, how that would fit our needs, and the final scenario in this whole more construction renovation then would be reduced renovation build to meet our needs. And just at the bottom column here, you'll see the dollar values associated with it, which we have actual costs, but this just gives like a comparison glance. And then also the scorecard, where does it meet what the county is looking for? Just again, as a way to formally evaluate what we're looking for. So from this slide to the next slide, this is taking some of the deferred maintenance that we talked about earlier. And some of the costs to perform this project. So the county complex construction work and other sites work associated with each scenario paired up with the deferred maintenance. So very quickly, we came to see we're looking at cost on the high end of potentially $189 million, cost on the low end of $139 million. So this is an order of magnitude for us to have as a pivot point, and for our finance director to reference, and just to get in touch with the reality of what we have and what we're dealing with here, and how we're going to plan for the future long term. So again, I think a relatively light exercise provides some context. We knew it was going to be expensive. Now we know the order of magnitude that we're in. So from there, if you follow this mentality, just as this example from scenario 2B is really what meets our needs, but again, what are the costs and what are the applications? So we talked with our consultant just to carry through some a vision here. What are we looking at? And I'll get to some more detailed scenarios. And as I mentioned before, we also looked at lease versus new build. We had some costs associated with that, where if we looked at, say, that the core county needs, we're looking at a roughly 41,000 square foot building. We're looking over a 20-year period. When you have lease costs and then the operational costs, we're looking at roughly $34 million, where a comparative new build would be $68 million. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. The lease build can get very expensive quickly. Could we look for a building to purchase, an existing building? Sure, they don't come up that often. Since I started here, I've been looking just at the market for roughly a three-year period now, and really the perfect situation hasn't really come up. There's been some interesting components. Again, not all meeting our exact square footage, but we have some ideas maybe to get around with that, with hybrid staff or shared desks or flex space. So it's definitely a complex process of where we want to go, but it provides another context where if you lease versus new build, it's almost two times the order of magnitude. The lease, you end up with, you don't really own anything in the end. The new build, you own something, but you also have that long-term preventative maintenance. And you build a new building, 20 years later, you're going to be looking at, okay, my HVAC systems. And so we're trying to look at that a whole for new build and existing buildings too. Just what are we looking at for efficiencies? Where the old jail, one thing that came up, this building is an odd shape, lots of exterior surface. That's more costly to maintain than just a rectangle square building. So trying to weigh on all this and lay out the. Yes, that's the.
I see Delegate Prycell.
Thank you.
And anyone else, please raise your hand.
Mr. Speaker, so if I understand this slide, it may not, but this is taking the county complex and saying lease versus build for the county complex. So on either of those scenarios, well, at least clearly with the leased situation, what do you do with the existing structure you got here under either one of these scenarios? What do you do with them?
And that's another question or exercise we went through. So we started off with a basic deed review of what we can or can't do with all of our buildings. So say, just for example, say the courts, this is a hypothetical situation. They give us notice tomorrow. We had this silent donor come in and we have $500 million to build new. Now we're stuck with these, buildings. We're looking for a tenant. We can't find a tenant. Can we sell the buildings or not? Can we? So these are things that kind of, I think the purpose of this is, we just lost a screen here. I don't know if it's okay. Yeah. That's definitely a factor in awareness. And that's where today I'm trying to paint this picture. There's so many integral parts. Like, for example, the Pocasset property right now, from my understanding, we have a purchase and sale agreement. There's a Article 97 land swap going on where it's up for review in the State House right now. The sale price is roughly $750,000. Is that so that's another, factor. And ultimately what we're trying to get here, we're going to have this document that'll be reviewed by county staff and officials. And then from there, once we, depending how we go about it, having some sort of implementation plan or an abridged summary version where what our finance director wants is essentially a spreadsheet with some numbers to pull around, and I can, she can move and come up with some scenarios saying, well, if we build this and we were to sell that, or we have revenue coming in from here, or can I make it work, or is it a complete pipe dream? So we also looked at trying to leverage, say, this is, for example, if the old jail, the decision was made, we're done with the old jail, we want to demo it. What is the value of the space up the hill here? Can we have a grounds lease with a developer? Could you do, we wanted to have everything on the table. Could we do housing or not? What are the pros and cons? One thing we learned pretty quick about the site, there's some restrictions on utilities to be able to serve the site if we increase for housing. So that's potentially a small, a roadblock there. Down the hill, could you do some sort of mixed use? Again, just trying to have numbers associated where, because someone's going to, when we have this conversation, someone's going to bring it up. Well, did you look into leasing? Did you look into these different costs? We did, and here's what we're talking about here. And maybe, unfortunately, some of the numbers, if we have a grounds lease, it's not really going to put a huge dent into our future vision. So that might impact our decision down the road. So this is the beginning, I think, of many in-depth conversations, discussions, and I think it takes a lot of time to digest. And we've been putting a lot of time and effort trying to how do we handle and tackle all these different scenarios.
I would assume that the courthouse is an historic structure that you can't really do anything with that building because of its historic nature.
That building is it's on Old Kings Highway, and it's Massachusetts and the National Register of Historic Places. So we understand there's some limitations there. The First District and Deeds building, as far as I'm aware, they aren't, but the deeds, Registry of Deeds is a whole other conversation. Where are they going? Where are they right now? Where are they going in the future? Are they, with electronic data, are they going to maybe confine their footprint? Right now, I know they required to have certain records. So there's just so many moving parts. So, and it's one where you need to keep on peeling back the onion until we get an understanding, and also be honest with ourselves as what we can actually do.
Delegate Harder.
Thanks. While we're stopped, quick question. You don't have to go back, but on the sites, you talked about the fire training site. Is that talking about the poisoned PFAS site, or is that talking about, I know we're renting something in Dennis or something, right?
So for clarification, the former Fire Training Academy at 155 South Flint Rock Road was that legacy fire training site, which right now is being remediated by the county. It currently is being used, besides the remediation, by our fighter training group, which has mobile fire training props, which go from town to town. So that's one use of the site. The rest of it is essentially a paved parking lot to prevent rainwater from getting into the groundwater. But we're looking at, okay, it's essentially a brownfield. Are there grants available for maybe some sort of reutilization of the site? For example, the dredge. In conversation with some of our consultants, that might be a perfect spot for them. Again, they're not there that often. They're in the middle of the woods, or if they're going to be loading up equipment at 6:30 in the morning or getting back late at night, no disturbances to the neighbors. But we have to go through that exercise as far as and just for further clarification, we worked with an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Yarmouth Fire Department and Provincetown Fire Department for a grant, FEMA grant for a fire training building. So there's a metal building at a town of Yarmouth property right now that we help facilitate through. So that's that other fire training piece, which that's going to be, from my understanding, the town of Yarmouth's control as far as the training. But I know we would be involved where needed.
How long do you think, any clue as to how long it would be before we can use the toxic land?
We've had conversations. So GZA is our licensed site professional. They're a consultant for that site. We've had conversations with them. They've been very positive about the vision. Obviously, any changes or proposed uses of the site would need to go through Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, because we have the remediation piece, public comment. So this could be, for example, like a year process of just the vetting and the proposal system. But that property, whoever owns the property is responsible for the remediation. No one's ever going to purchase that property. So we're trying to look at success stories there. What can we do? Can we get the dredge there? Can we do some sort of PFAS research? So
Anyone else at the moment? Please.
Okay, so from here, this is an example. We talked about the different scenarios. This one goes over scenario 4, and there's a ton of information on here where but it deep dives into that scenario as far as, okay, what do we have for square footages? The scenario 4 was renovating in house. So we know we have limited space in house to fit all of our needs, but how do we try to make it work? So our consultant put these exclamation point flags where it's not meeting your end goal, but would it suffice, and could we find a way to make it happen? So each scenario has this process that goes through it, the pros and the cons. They have some specific layouts, these block and stack diagrams as far as what department would be where and what square footage we can use and how we could maybe share workspaces. So we go through the exercise for each one, and this is an example where we might need to revisit all these and go through in detail if interested. But again, going through Superior Courthouse, where our county staff was, what can we do to optimize existing space? It's almost like the tiny house show on the Discovery Channel, where you can fit a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom, a living room into that little shed. At what point does it become too much? And it's a balancing act. And we definitely saw some easy low-lying fruit where, okay, maybe if we move a wall, we can really accommodate our needs to get by, because we're already pretty tight on space. We have temporary desks and people scattered around. So we have a short-term space issue and then the long-term one. So how do we take that in stride? So again, just showing example of what the deeds and probate basement potential, fire and dredge potential. If you just swipe what you had inside the building, and can we have a cohabitation there? Would it make sense? County farmhouse, same. Children's Cove, we already went through that process, but again, they wanted to include that in the report, so that they're noted in here. So another piece, for example, and this is kind of the final component, would be highlighting. We talked about, okay, some of these scenarios, and as far as a site plan, if we were to go with the new county administration building, where would it be, and what else could we do with the site? And this plan pretty much sums it up, where you show the blue block would be your county administration building, and they identified some space, the old jail, if it were to be demoed, could it be potential development housing, a parking lot behind the first district, could that be development? And then the Main Street area, potential for mixed use. Obviously, this is all just information there. No decisions have been made, but we thought it was important the housing piece has come up so much. Here's the ins and outs, where public reception would be one piece. Is it zoned properly? But also, do the facilities support that kind of work? This is a section view. So if you look at this plan here, it's shown in the bottom right corner. The white line shows essentially a cut through. It shows elevations where you'd have a 2-story administration building, potential for a 1-story parking deck. There's all these different components that happen where if you start to build, you take up real estate here, you might need parking there, and parking deck may not be well received in the Old Kings Highway District. But again, these are just details of, and this might provide us with some, okay, we don't like this scenario at all, scratch that. Okay, we like the idea of this component, but trying to be creative. This is the second option the consultant came up with, where, okay, do you make a kind of a quad building situation with the admin building and Superior Courthouse and deeds and probate? Again, potential for reuse development, just to have that there as a reference piece. And again, same situation, section, how is it going to look and feel? Is it going to be this monstrous building or not? So from there, I wanted to, that's essentially the overview. Now we'll talk about where we're at with project schedule. So we've essentially gone through the initial exercise of data collection. We just received the final draft plan for review on the 28th. We plan on reviewing it internally, distributing it to our internal departments, having them comment and weigh in to make sure the data and the numbers are correct. From there, where do we go? And that's the big question. We talked with our county administration group, as far as after we Michael Dutton works with county commissioners, we might receive feedback or guidance. This group might have feedback or guidance to start looking at internally preparing an implementation plan. So where do we think we're heading? And I talked about the finance director component. How does this work financially? So we wanted to have a relatively short abridged document to go with the master plan, where someone can say, okay, here's, if we wanted to go on X or Y in our vision, how can we make it work financially? Or is it just not going to work financially? I think that would be a very valuable document. The other component moving forward would be to prepare a formal transmission memo to the courts, showing them, here's our facility condition assessment, here's our master plan, here's what we have for deferred maintenance. Give them a project schedule, financial forecast, and talk about the lease with them as well. Because right now the lease is original lease from 1989. It's not written in the county's favor. We've been working, I mean, we have a great working relationship with the courts. They know these projects are coming, but how do we plan for the future? They've told us that the courts have a $3 billion deferred maintenance component right now. They potentially might be looking to bond this through DCAM. So, ears perked up with that. Okay, that's a huge number, but if they're going to be looking at all the buildings and infrastructure, does our $50 million number not sound so bad? And can that be included? And maybe, right now we front the money with the lease, and we get reimbursed. Maybe some of these projects could be performed by, a DCAM project. So in the past, I wasn't here for it, but our facility director, Don Reynolds, mentioned some of the bigger projects. DCAM would come in. They might finance the project up front, where the county would still be involved with the project, maybe construction planning management, but the funding part would come directly through DCAM. So that would give us some financial flexibility where we wouldn't have to worry about, if we're doing an HVAC improvement at the first district, they would just pay for it all. Again, these are just hypothetical things that we would want to discuss and try to plan for the future, because that the court lease and relationship is a critical part for us to be able to have bandwidth to do other tasks. So if we're going to do a renovation project, if we have $50 million of deferred maintenance over 15-year period, can we how much can we actually do for ourselves? And it's we're not at that point yet, but we're looking to get there where we can figure out how we can, what are some options we can actually proceed with. So with that comes the overall, the summary of the report. So if there's any questions or discussion, I'm happy to.
May I just ask what DCAM stands for?
Department of Capital Asset Management. It's essentially state's facilities building and property manager group.
Through the speaker, who's next? Delegate Frederickson, please.
There's quite a project here. Unbelievable work. And I know it might sound strange, but it sounds like a interesting project. Get involved and figure it out. Would you say this is a crisis?
It's a tough question. What we're concerned about here, from my perspective with space and facilities, if we continue to not address our building needs and concerns, we could end up in a crisis with an urgent matter. So what we're trying to do right now is look at this as a preventative plan. We know we have some major, projects, issues. We're trying to address them now and get our arms around it. So, for example, if we lose an example actually is New Bedford Court Systems. We've talked where they lost their HVAC system. They're on a temporary system. Temporary system goes online. The piping in the building is past its useful life. The valves start to fail, or this starts to fail. Now you're in this reactive state. So right now we have control of our buildings. We have full occupancy, but we're concerned as our equipment is at the end of its useful life or longer term, we might run into issues. So we're very concerned. We're very concerned about this project right now and trying to move it forward. And
And we don't really have a funding source for this at the moment, correct? Not that you have to worry about that, but you're presenting the numbers.
Yeah, this is just right now it's a plan evaluation. There's been no funding sources allocated to these specific pieces, but what we're looking to do right now in the planning mechanism is provide a good resource for our finance director to look at as far as how can we navigate this whole funding piece. And one of the answers could be, depending which way you go, we don't have the funding for this part of the plan. And then from there, we need to look at how you proceed and what you do if you have a limited bandwidth. How we move forward.
Okay, I'll just make one comment. I mentioned it before, out of respect for my sister from Yarmouth. I know the Mattakese Middle School building is available and they're looking for something, but that is a big space. It obviously needs some infrastructure improvements, but I looked at that for other reasons as well in my prior profession. But it has massive space, lots of needs, and could probably house a large portion of county government in one place on top of lease space.
We haven't had any formal discussions about Mattakese, but I would put Mattakese in a, potential purchase or lease with the asterisk of needing renovation work. So the concern that we would have there, we could look at each case study, and I know that's an aging infrastructure. We would want to be careful looking at a building like that. Could we be into a new build dollar value with that aging infrastructure? So as it's definitely something we've had on the radar. We've had discussions about, but no answers as far as how to proceed with that. Yeah.
Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you. This is a fascinating presentation, and it really strikes me that we're dealing with a very complex matrix with a lot of different components, a lot of different considerations, and at least as I heard it, one additional consideration that strikes me as important is prioritizing. There have to be areas where we are really concerned about impending failure, and that seems to me an element that needs to be considered. Could you lay out, just briefly at least, what do you see as the most time critical, potentially hazardous situations, failures that would be real trouble for us?
So with that's the purpose of this whole study, where that year 1 to 3, as we identified with the consultant, there's some immediate needs we identified there. For example, kind of an immediate need, the deeds and probate building. It's an original electric system, the original switchgear. We've been told by the consultants, and then by others, just say we have an on-call electrician. They said that it's any day that could go, and if you have to shut it off, it likely won't turn back on. So that'll be something that we'll have. For example, so it's a calculated risk where, not to be all doom and gloom, with the consultant list, but you're really looking at the risk associated with something like an elevator. They mentioned, well, an elevator you could bring to the the end of its useful life and let that it has safety protocols, let that maybe fail or have a need for it, where other equipment, it's more critical and it's a health or safety hazard. So there's a different balancing act, and that's where through this year's capital plan and the next year we're going to do our best to try to have this implementation plan and what we try to get on the docket right away for immediate concerns.
Right. As I recall, there were administrative offices where, when we were doing budget last year, we prioritized and moved ahead in advance of hearing this presentation, because there were life safety and health considerations in the ceiling tiles, as I remember it. That's kind of my question here is, as we go down the road, where are the next biggies that really need to be addressed on the shorter term?
And that we'll have to work with our working group, our capital plan group, Vera, Michael, myself, Don, to decide, okay, we have this draft plan. What are we going to accept as final? And where are we going to step forward? So I don't have, a final priority list right now, but we're working on that and we'll be.
Chairman,
Yes, please.
from a policy point of view, I think I could summarize our working group's point of view as saying that the status of the leases with the courts is our most pressing issue at this time. The leases that we have with the courts offer us we have really no degrees of freedom in terms of the courts won't guarantee us payment. If you look in the letter of the lease, any payments owed to us are subject to appropriation, which of course is always the case. But we have from a policy point of view, I think the leases are a huge hurdle in effectively planning for the use of the space we own, much less new space that we take down. Thank you.
This was an amazing presentation. I have more questions than you can imagine, but I'd like to be able to talk with the Assembly and perhaps a subcommittee meeting and talk more about this. And could you come back at a later date when we have more specific questions for you? I have 20 of them right now, but I'm not going to.
This is going to take many iterations of discussion. Yeah.
I see one more question, then we'll.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. It's not necessarily a question, but it's more for us as county government. Sounds like our leases are not up to date and should be done. We should be helping them contact our legislators who are happy to come and see us and talk about more money they want to get from us. How about them getting money for us for a important issue? Because I don't think it's brought to the surface enough. Maybe you have, but it's fallen off deaf ears. But maybe we need to do more as an assembly.
I think they're well aware it's the 1989 lease that has all in the favor of the state, which is our biggest tenant by far. So yes, that's something we could go to our legislative delegation and say, can you help us update this lease and make sure that we continue our partnership on a very strong financial basis? That's the question we can put in a subcommittee meeting.
Speaker, if I may, many across the state, many people, many organizations in our situation have similar problems with the court leases. And so instead of going at it just Barnstable legislative and our legislative delegation, our county administrator is reaching out to others so that we try and speak with more voices and one voice on this subject of the disadvantageous leases. And so I'm definitely appreciative to hear the willingness to engage in that regard with regard to talking to our legislative delegation. But let's wait and let's be judicious about it such that it happens at the right time and with the right people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. There are many more questions, I'm sure, but I'd like to bring this back to the Assembly, and I'd like to have some subcommittee work, and I'd like to talk to you about so many questions that I particularly have on everything you've talked about. It's mind-boggling how much is going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have the Assembly will now convene, and we're going to reports of officers and committees. I know.
Yes.
I think I mentioned that.
I
But
just thought that we were postponing it.
No, I'm postponing to another meeting. I thought, and I think correctly that these the two agenda items who took up all this time probably could have taken up more, and I didn't think that. I thought that we were overburdened by having a third one, and I'm going to defer that to another meeting and for another speaker to decide. On to Mr. Killian with the Assembly of Delegates Finance Committee meeting of September 29th. September 2025. Delegate Killian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Assembly of the Delegates Standing Committee on Finance met remotely on Monday, September 29th, 2025 at 3 p.m. And the committee discussed the following. Proposed ordinance 2025-11 supplemental budget appropriation for shared regional housing services fiscal year 2026, and discussion on a study of grant funding for Cape Cod regional government programs under resolution 2025-09. Administrator Michael Dutton explained the need for a proposed 2025-11, including the program's revenue neutral structure funded by town contributions. Delegates expressed support, noting that the program's success is a collaborative countywide effort. The committee then held a detailed discussion with the Cape Cod Commission and the county staff regarding grant funding, including how grants support personnel, what happens if funding ends, and how surpluses and budgetary transparency should be addressed, with Cape Cod Commission and administration and finance staff providing answers. Members agreed that the county is well positioned for recommended clearer budget presentation of grants and tracking of grant-supported positions. Clerk Fletcher outlined the framework for a committee report on grants under Resolution 2025-09, which will be drafted and circulated for review.
Thank you. And that brings us to number 13, which is feathers right into this report by Delegate Killian. Proposed ordinance 2025-11 supplemental budget appropriation for shared regional housing services fiscal year 2026. Can I get a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-11?
Moved.
I don't know who it was.
I moved.
Good. Then I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Let's have a discussion. Is there further discussion on this? We've had quite a bit of discussion even today. Is there a discussion or opinions on whether we should vote this up or down today? I see no hands. Oh, who we got? Delegate O'Malley.
Not a question. I would just make essentially the same comment that I made about this appropriation at the Finance Committee meeting, which is this is a perfectly good example of shared services for which we are receiving reimbursement from the towns for that service in equal amount to what this is going to cost, what the expenditure is. So this is essentially revenue neutral. That's having us work appropriately with the towns to accomplish things. And I think it's a good model.
Thank you. Delegate Gessen, Speaker Gessen.
Thank you, Speaker Owen. So I just want to comment on the fact that I'm super supportive of this and super happy to see the county administrator having been able to pull together this effort amongst multiple towns and keep this going after the ARPA funds have wrapped up. I would also like to comment on the fact that we've had a lot of conversations about housing on the Assembly over the past couple of weeks and months. And a lot of those conversations, especially recently, have focused on what needs to be done regionally versus what needs to be done through local control. And I just think that this Shared Regional Housing Services Office is a fantastic example of the fact that a lot of the time it just makes sense for communities to work together voluntarily often when it comes to housing issues and other issues. And I would just like to say that I think this should be an informative lesson as we look toward, other efforts that the Assembly is getting itself into on the fact that even if the Assembly as a regional government leaves a lot of resources up to local control, that does not preclude the fact that some things will make more sense regionally. And if we have a county administrator that wants to work with individual municipalities and wants to make things more efficient on a regional basis, there's never going to be any reason for towns not to be able to do that. So I think this is a perfect example of it. I'm hoping that we get to see a lot more housing on a regional level going forward. And I appreciate all the work everyone on the Assembly's done to keep this.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comments? Represent Delegate Friesel.
Not the legislature, thank God. All right. I just technical matter. I think it's ordinance 2025-11, not 13, right?
I've been saying 11. I'm not sure.
It's listed on our as 13.
Mr. Clerk,
Printed out a draft that mixed that up with the number for the public participation process or policy from last week. So I believe that the chair's been saying the right number, but you're correct, 2025-11, not 13 as it's on a,
Right.
as it's on a.
Okay,
yeah.
just make sure that when we vote, we're voting the right ordinance. That's all.
thank you for that. Seeing no further comments, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Clerk.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen.
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder,
Yes,
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Roman.
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty.
yes,
Delegate Warner.
Yes.
Delegate Wyman
Yes.
Colombo. Mr. Speaker, that is 13 delegates representing 95.56% of the county's population.
Thank you. And thank the administration for all that hard work. Number 14, is there new business? Delegate Frederickson, please.
I don't know exactly what qualifies new business. But since last week's meeting and before, there's been so many comments about what we did last week, not positive, what I am seeing, a few. But one thing is the process. And I question whether we need a new process that was kind of just thrown on us with no discussion about how to go about this proposed tax or fee. So whether that's new or old business, we haven't had time to discuss it on what we're doing, where we're going. We had a public meeting on nothing, seriously nothing. There was nothing for them to chew on, to talk about, other than some of the usual people that come through to these meetings. I'm not saying it wasn't all negative or positive, because all I'm saying, what we're doing is convoluted. That's my opinion, that we should try a different process to make sure we're getting the best process possible and coming out with a good decision that all our communities can agree upon.
Mr. Speaker Gessen, please.
I would just say that, in keeping with making sure we follow open meeting law, I think it's a fantastic thing for us to discuss as a shrunken leadership and make sure is on the agenda appropriately for our following meetings. That way delegates can weigh in and we can make sure the process is transparent. And the public's also aware of what we're doing.
Delegate Harder.
I don't believe that it will, since we're under new business, which means things that we will want to discuss at a future meeting. I believe I can say that there will be at least one Economic Affairs Committee meeting, should the new speaker allow, that will start to take the process back and really set it out there for townspeople and others to understand what's going on, because we will have a draft edition for everyone to work off of, so they'll know better what they're speaking to.
Delegate Wyman Colombo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Then I would like to suggest that we get this on the agenda for our next regular meeting so that we can have a conversation at that point and a discussion at that point about this.
As the Speaker Pro Tem, I will ask the clerk to put that in forthwith. Thank you for that comment. Delegate Frizel.
So therefore, I agree that it should be on the agenda. The question is whether we have some structure to that discussion. So would there be a meeting of the Economic Affairs Committee in between now and the 15th, our next meeting, so that there will be some structure that, I'm going to take the yes from the chair of that committee. Yeah. Is that correct? Okay.
I can speak, Speaker, if that's okay.
Through the speaker, Delegate
Sure.
Gessen.
Thank you. Just to answer that, obviously, I think, for lack of, reiterating it, we've had our current speakers left. It's usually at the speaker's discretion to set up that meeting. But as far as I understand, the resolution that we all voted on in April does lay out the fact that, whatever recommendations end up going to economic affairs get fleshed out there and then go in front of the full assembly. So, it's going to be a matter of coordinating with Delegate Harder and Sheriff Harder and members of the committee. That I think it would make a lot of sense for this to be on the agenda for October 15th and for the Economic Affairs Committee to be able to provide some flesh for discussion, if not a final proposal, at least, a basis for a conversation to be actually productive in front of the full assembly between now and the 15th.
Thank you. And now I see Delegate Killian.
Just the comment on the timeline we were given about a month or so ago. There is an item on here about a subcommittee meeting to discuss delegate feedback in draft of HRP and ordinance. Is in addition to your economic development committee. So is there another committee meeting besides the one that you have scheduled that is listed here to take place on October 6th?
I think at a risk of, trying to read the previous speaker's mind, my understanding was, and she did, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
She did bring this up at the last meeting, that rather than creating another subcommittee and another she just wanted a drafting working group that she announced at the last working group to try to draft something up, bring it to the Economic Affairs Committee meeting, and then for Economic Affairs to bring it to the full assembly. To my understanding, there is still a plan for that drafting group that the speaker named to meet. That's to consist of Delegate Warner, Delegate Harder, Delegate Sampson, and myself, to try to get pen to paper with a smaller group, get that in front of the Economic Affairs Committee for public hearing and a public conversation, and then get that in front of the full assembly. I just want to obviously note the fact that since we do have leadership changes incoming, some of these things are unpredictable. So I would appreciate patience from delegates if we don't stick exactly to the schedule that we set out before we knew the new variables at play. But I think at the very least, I can promise nothing's going to go faster than the schedule that was published to the delegates. And secondly, everything's going to be announced thoroughly for the full body to be aware of what's going on, the schedule moving on. And before any votes are ever taken, it's going to be after a thorough process.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the clerk and parliamentarian to give us some advice on timelines of any of these meetings going forward. Do you have any thought process with all the leadership changes that are going on, how this can move forward in a judicious manner, sir?
Other than the fact that I'll work with the current acting speaker, who's the deputy speaker, and the chair of the Economic Affairs Committee. I believe the acting speaker is on Economic Affairs. That certainly, if it makes sense, that we can schedule a meeting before October 15th of the Economic Affairs Committee, and then see what happens.
And that will be duly posted so that any one of the members of the assembly can attend, or the public, actually. Thank you. Delegate Brazel.
Yeah, thank you. Just a note of caution. I heard, I think from the deputy speaker, that something would come out that's, quote, final. I would suggest that anything that is produced for our meeting on the 15th clearly not be something, quote, final. That things are still fluid and in a drafting stage for consideration, but nothing in the way of something that's, quote, final. That's all.
Through the speaker.
Well, hold on. I'm going to defer to our clerk.
I would just say that under our rules, nothing's final until it's voted on, and anybody can offer amendments to a legislative proposal. I assume that would go for a home rule petition as well as an ordinance, and so it doesn't quite work like that. Any of you as delegates or the board collectively can introduce an ordinance certainly, but the home rule petition would be introduced, and it would always be subject to amendment or postponement based on our rules. So by definition, something that gets introduced can't be
can be in
Well,
final form.
I'm just saying that it's something clearly that we're still working on. It's a work in progress, and it could be actually sent back to the committee, both the drafting and the economic committee, for further work after the initial discussion. I'm just suggesting this is not like a one-time discussion of this, that's all.
I'm going to take Delegate Harder next.
Thank you. In a perfect world, we would have an Economic Affairs Committee meeting next Wednesday where Delegate Gessen, Delegate Sampson, and Delegate Warner and myself will present to the committee a draft, which will lay out our thoughts about what we will be asking the legislature for. As a reminder, this is us asking the legislature for something. We're not setting a law. We're not declaring that this is what the county is going to do. Having said that, we will present that to the Economic Affairs on the 8th. We'll come back the following week, let everyone have a view at it, which I'm sure will be polished up at the meeting on the 8th. And then we'll discuss it, get your feedback, get feedback from anybody else who wants to attend. I don't know if we do the public meeting then or not. And then I assume we're going to have at least one more Economic Affairs Committee meeting or do it in a public hearing before we do a final draft. Because we still haven't heard we've heard a lot from towns who did their own home rule petitions, but we haven't heard from towns that haven't done it. So we don't know whether they want this done or not. So as I try to tell people, until it's on Assembly of Delegates letterhead, it doesn't count. Thank you.
I'm going to take one more question from Delegate Gessen and one more comment from Delegate Gessen. And I think that we probably talked this out as much as we need to right now. Delegate Gessen, you can have the last comment.
I think Delegate Harder put it well. I'd only say that if I did say the word final, that it's far from what I think the plan is going to be, and I don't expect anything going through a legislative process every final until the final vote taken, and that is still a ways away.
Any other new business? Go ahead.
Going back to this, and I struggle with the idea we're moving this at relatively light speed. That is it our responsibility to file a home rule petition that impacts towns that know nothing about it? I just want to know if that's counties. I don't ask for an answer right now, but I struggle with that without getting real feedback from our communities to have an option to discuss this with us and us to go, me as a delegate, go back and get real feedback once we get a good draft of what it is. But I just question the whole thing. If it's our responsibility. Better yet, why doesn't the Assembly just have the other towns that have petitions come before us and ask us to support their petition? I think that is probably a reasonable thing. But anyway, that's enough for tonight from me. So I'll be quiet.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to number 15, announcements. Are there announcements? Seeing none, there is one more item on the agenda, and that's adjournment. Wait, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any, Mr. Clerk, could you take a roll call?
Mr. Speaker, Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Friesel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Speaker Gessen.
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Speaker Pro Tem Omen,
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant, Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty, Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo. Mr. Speaker, that's.
Thank you all for your valuable time and comments.